Longevity is certainly not just about living longer, right? It includes women's health. It includes just the absolute basics of safety for women and what their well-being is.
I think healthy masculinity, what I see is an instinct to protect, but also lift women up and see them as equals.
That idea of like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or I only need 5 hours of sleep. Sleep is for the weak. I think it's time to have a conversation about that, because sleep deprivation is not really a badge of honor.
Use your bed for sleep and intimacy only. Not for work, not for scrolling, not for watching TV.
Sleep is not a luxury. It's not optional. It's just something that you have to prioritize. And, spoiler alert, like, life never really seems to calm down. Like, we have to just prioritize that this is the thing that we're going to do.
Welcome to MD Longevity Lab, where we're playing the long game. This is a podcast where science meets real life, with expert insights, practical tips, and real-world tools to not only live longer, but live better. Our aim is to radically change the way medicine is practiced and enable individuals to age gracefully, maintaining healthspan and vitality well into their later years. We're your hosts, Dr. Nisha and Dr. Vikas Patel, physicians, partners in life, and parents balancing work, wellness, and everything in between. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MD Longevity Lab podcast, where we are playing the long game. Before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to make an official announcement. In light of the latest Epstein file drop, I, Vikas Patel, am officially marked safe from being in the Epstein files.
The proverbial bar is literally underground. And yet here you are, stepping over it proudly.
That's because transparency matters.
I mean, let's be honest. We probably wouldn't be married if you were running in those circles. Full disclosure, that would have probably come up during the vetting process. My parents would have 100% found out about this in some background check FBI situation. But in other news, if you were some sort of social climber, I would not be able to keep up either. So we just probably wouldn't be together.
I'm such a social climber.
Yeah.
And I think your parents did do a background check.
They 100% did do a background check. Like, he's clean. You can go on one date with this dude.
I surprised Nisha last week with this Nike Arena Sablenka tennis dress, and she acted like it was like gifted couture. Meanwhile, at the Grammys, right, so-and-so is wearing Vera Wang or Oscar de la Renta, and Nisha's at home on the couch watching Netflix in her Sablenka Nike dress. No after parties, no fake niceties, just authentic. That's who we are.
Yeah.
Not social climbers.
Yes. We are either in scrubs, athleisure, workout clothes, or when we get dressed up, when I get dressed up, I'm wearing my Nike Sablenka dress. I hope you're not wearing my Nike Sablenka dress.
We're supposed to go to a friend's birthday party next weekend, and she's like, do you think I can wear this Sablenka Nike dress?
I think so. Why not?
Stay tuned. We'll see what happens next weekend.
But seriously, I know this is a sharp turn for a health podcast, and every time one of these news things drop, you see these names and you realize these are people who sold their souls in exchange for money and power, which is kind of insane because we're in the longevity space, and that's not what longevity is. That's moral bankruptcy. And we always talk about you can't biohack your way out of a bad conscience, right? There's no amount of cold plunges, NAD, or sleep or vitamins that can make up for that.
As physicians, like, obviously we take the Hippocratic Oath, and it's really about not doing any harm. I think the news with Atia being in the files, and I think it's tough, like, when you actually work clinical medicine and you see the downsides of when people are taken advantage of. Like, we deal so much with abuse cases and people holding power over one another. And I think that people lose sight sometimes when celebrity and fame and money are thrown their way, that they're able to have that separate their morals from like what they're after, which is their own personal goal, right? Like, I want to be successful. And they lose sight of the fact that, oh, wait, I'm a practicing physician. Like, I took some O's about like the kind of standards that I should be held up to. So it's a sad kind of commentary on where we are as a society. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I mean, trust lies at the core of our profession as physicians. And without it, none of this matters. And this is true across most professions that serve, right? Police officers, teachers, physicians, nurses, clergy. Most people in those roles are in it for the right reasons. And they show up every day because they genuinely want to help other people. But occasionally there are bad apples. And the problem with bad apples is that they don't just rot on their own, they take down trust in the entire profession that they're associated with. And that's the real damage. So while most of us are here for the right reasons, we also have a responsibility to hold the line and call it out when someone crosses that line. We're mandated reporters as physicians. If we see abuse, if we suspect harm in a child or a vulnerable person, we don't get to look the other way. That's not really an option.
I think obviously having a wife and having a daughter, it changes how you see things. Not that you need to have a wife or a daughter to care about women being exploited, but it does help to sharpen that lens. And I think you look at the world a little bit differently when you have a little girl. Longevity is certainly not just about living longer, right? It includes women's health. It includes just the absolute basics of safety for women and what their well-being is. I don't think you can really talk about health span if you're willing to just ignore half the population.
Yep. And that's why I married you. No, seriously, you're a good dude. Our sons and daughters are very lucky to have a dad who embodies healthy masculinity. And I think healthy masculinity, what I see is an instinct to protect, but also lift women up and see them as equals. But just so we're clear, and for everyone listening, if you ever give me a reason to question that, I won't need an Epstein file drop. I will personally cut your longevity short.
I will cut you. Watch out. She has a razor like tucked
in my teeth.
In her cheek there.
For sure. Public services announcement is complete. Should we move on to our topic of the podcast now?
That's right. We are going to talk about sleep today. All right. So, I want to start this podcast, other than what we just covered, with a question. And I want you to think about this. If I told you that there was just one single intervention that is free, available to everyone, requires no equipment, no supplements, no gym membership, that could reduce your risk of dementia by 30% and lower your all-cause mortality by 14%, help you lose visceral fat, improve your mood, strengthen your immune system, and literally help to wash out the toxins out of your brain, you'd think I'm selling something, right? You'd think it's like some sort of miracle drug, or at least a very elaborate multi-level marketing scheme of some sort. But this intervention exists, and it's called sleep. Here's the paradox. Everyone knows that sleep is important. Nobody really would argue with you about the fact that sleep matters. And yet it's literally the first thing that we're willing to cut when we have to make a sacrifice, right? We have a work deadline, cut sleep. Our kids' activities are going late, cut sleep. We want to watch one more episode of that show we're binging on Netflix, cut sleep, right? Scrolling at your phone well into the night. It's just this cycle that we're okay propagating, and there is a net negative to it. So that idea of like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, or I only need 5 hours of sleep, sleep is for the weak. I think it's time to have a conversation about that, because sleep deprivation is not really a badge of honor.
Yeah, I've had patients brag to me about how little they sleep, the same way people brag about being busy. Like, congratulations, you're exhausted, you're miserable, and your brain is marinating in its own waste products. Very impressive.
I mean, I used to brag about not sleeping. Because you can do it and you can train yourself to not sleep and feel fine. Like, you think you feel fine, but you're doing this damage over time. So
I've always prioritized sleep, like minimum of 8 hours.
yes, you have. Yes, Anisha, when we met, would like go to bed at 8 p.m. and wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
and then go run 5 or 10 miles.
Yeah.
I would go to bed at like 1 a.m. and then wake up at 7.
I was told nothing good happens after midnight. Any
It
bad
depends
thing,
on your sleep chronotype.
maybe.
I used to get my best work done after midnight.
No, I'd have my best dreams after midnight. I'm good.
So the data kind of is a bit damning on sleep, and we're gonna walk through exactly what happens when you don't sleep, and I mean like what's happening in your brain and body, why shortcuts that people take to fix it often make things worse, and what the research shows about optimizing this foundational piece of your health. We're also going to keep this practical and relatable. You don't need to become obsessed with your sleep tracker. You don't need to turn your bedroom into like a sensory deprivation chamber. But you do need to understand what's at stake and make some intentional choices regarding sleep. So let's start with the numbers, because I think some of the statistics on sleep and mortality are striking, that they may change how you prioritize this.
Yeah, here's what the research tells us. A large meta-analysis looking at over 1.3 million patients found that sleeping less than 7 hours per night is associated with a 14% increase of dying from any cause, all cause mortality. And sleeping 5 hours of less, that risk goes even higher. A study in Nature Communications followed nearly 8,000 people starting at age 50 and tracked them for 25 years. People who consistently slept 6 hours or less had a 30% higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who slept 7 hours or more.
And here's what's kind of crucial about that study. They started following these people in midlife, in their 50s and 60s. So this isn't just about sleep in your 70s when you're already showing signs of cognitive decline. This is about sleep in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, setting the stage for what happens to your brain a few decades later. Your future self is watching you scroll TikTok at 1 a.m. and silently it's judging you. Harvard researchers found something even more stark. People who slept fewer than 5 hours per night were twice as likely to develop dementia and twice as likely to die compared to those who slept 6 to 8 hours. So twice as likely. That's not a small effect. It's not statistical noise. Doubling the risk, right? And when you think about what we know about why this happens, the mechanism, it makes complete sense. But before you get there, I want to make something clear. This isn't really about obsessing over the exact number of hours. Sleep regularity or the consistency of when you go to sleep and when you wake up may actually be a stronger predictor of mortality than just the duration alone.
Yeah, there was a UK study of over 60,000 people that found sleep regularity was more predictive of mortality risk than sleep duration. So people who went to sleep and woke up within a 1 hour window each day had a significantly lower mortality than those where sleep timing varied by 3 hours or more, right? Those creatures of habit. So it doesn't really matter if, you're on vacation, yeah, that's me. I am a creature of habit. Yeah. And that's why, I can preach about longevity because I get 8 hours of sleep.
And you're not in the Epstein files.
And I'm not in the Epstein files.
So it's not just about getting the 7 hours somewhere in a 24-hour cycle. It's about your body having a rhythm and a predictable pattern, right? Your circadian system needs consistency to function optimally. And when that system is dysregulated, everything downstream ends up suffering. Let's talk about what actually happens in your brain when we do go to sleep, because this is where the dementia connection really becomes most clear.
Because so there's something called the glymphatic system, which is the brain's cleanup crew. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So this is one of the most important discoveries in neuroscience in the last decade or so. This glymphatic system that Nisha is referring to, when I first learned about it, it kind of fundamentally changed the way that I think about sleep. The glymphatic system is essentially the brain's waste clearance system. So it's more or less like a sewage system for your brain, except instead of pipes, it uses the spaces around the blood vessels to flush CSF or cerebrospinal fluid through all of the brain tissue. And it literally washes away metabolic waste. For a long time, scientists did not really understand how the brain cleanses itself. The rest of the body has a lymphatic system that it uses to do this. But in the brain, literally, this glymphatic system does the same thing. So what happens when you go to bed is your cells in your brain actually shrink. Some of them shrink as much as 60%, so that your glymphatic system can wash away. Your cerebrospinal fluid can literally flush through the entire cellular structure of your brain and take out all of the waste products. And what are those primary waste products, right? Beta amyloid. This is one of those proteins that neuroscientists scan for in the brain to try and detect whether somebody's developing signs of dementia. And so that protein clumps together to form these plaques that we know now are associated with Alzheimer's disease. When you think about what that means, it means that during the day, as your brain is doing work, right? You're thinking, you're making decisions, you're remembering where you parked, you're arguing with people on the internet, your brain is producing these amyloid beta plaques and all of these other metabolic byproducts. That's completely normal. But if you don't get enough sleep, you're not clearing that waste effectively, and then it accumulates. It accumulates night after night, year after year, and then we can actually start detecting it on the latest tests that we do.
Yeah, even one night of sleep deprivation can lead to increased beta amyloid levels in your brain. That's just one night, even in healthy young adults, so not just us oldies. The accumulation is measurable. So next time someone says, I'll just power through on no sleep, what they're really saying is, I've decided to let my brain sit in its own waste tonight.
It creates this like vicious cycle, because we also know that that beta amyloid accumulates and it actually disrupts sleep. So poor sleep leads to amyloid buildup, which leads to worse sleep, which leads to more buildup. It's this negative feedback loop that over decades actually ends up driving Alzheimer's disease. So the glymphatic system also clears these tau proteins, which form they're these neurofibrillary tangles. And this is one of the other hallmarks of Alzheimer's pathology. So we're not talking about just one mechanism. We're talking about the fundamental housekeeping that your brain needs to do every single night just for us to stay healthy. This is why the midlife sleep data is so important. It's not just that your sleep at 75 causes dementia at 77. It's that your poor sleep at 40, 45, 50, 55. It's this accumulated problem that occurs over decades, and it may actually be setting the stage for what manifests clinically much later in life. This, I think, concept really reframes sleep completely. It's not just downtime. It's not unproductive time. It's active maintenance that your body is doing. Your brain is literally a cleaning house. And if you skip that cleaning or cut it short, you're accumulating garbage in the most precious organ that you have. You know, we all know what happens if we just skip taking out the garbage in our own home for a week or a month or a year, let alone like what that would cause in our own brain.
So does that mean when I ask you to put your power tools away or clean up your office space at work or at home, like you should actually just listen to your wife and clean up your space? It's kind of like the glymphatic system.
I mean, I don't think me cleaning my space is going to affect my dementia risk.
We don't know yet.
It may, it may short my life because you do have that razor blade tucked
Stored in my mouth.
Right.
For if you act up, you know what's coming.
That's right. I do know.
All right, so let's cover some of these shortcuts that tend to backfire, which are common sleep medications. Given how important sleep is, it makes sense that people want to fix it when it's not working. And that's where we need to have this honest conversation about sleep medications, because the solutions that patients often reach for can create new problems without them even realizing it. Let's start with one that's probably the most accessible over-the-counter sleep aid. Think Benadryl, right? We've all heard of Benadryl, diphenhydramine. It's also the active ingredient in ZzzQuil, Unisom, Tylenol PM. And this is an antihistamine with strong sedating side effects. And here's the problem with diphenhydramine. It's an anticholinergic drug. It blocks something called acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that's critical for learning and memory. If we're using diphenhydramine, Benadryl for occasional allergies or an allergic reaction, that's probably fine. But using diphenhydramine or any of these products like ZzzQuil, Unisom, Tylenol PM regularly, and if you're using that on a nightly basis for a sleep aid, that's where the data is very concerning. A large study from the University of Washington followed nearly 3,500 older adults for 7 years. They found that people who use these anticholinergic drugs, including diphenhydramine, had a dose-dependent increased risk of dementia. So these are over-the-counter meds you don't need a prescription for. And sometimes when you're struggling with stress, you just walk up to Walgreens or CVS and think, okay, I need a good night's sleep. I'm going to grab Unisom or Tylenol PM when these things are really hurting you in the long run.
Honestly, like, especially in the emergency medicine literature, they don't even recommend that we use diphenhydramine even for allergies anymore. Like, this is a drug that, though it's safe, honestly, if it was going through the FDA approval process today, it would be a prescription drug. It's so old. It's just like Tylenol, so old that we just have accepted its use, but they're not really safe drugs. They have some problems. So really, this is kind of like the difference between being asleep and being knocked out. You're horizontal either way, but one of those involves your glymphatic system actually doing its job, and the other is totally different.
Yeah, and the same happens with benzodiazepines, right?
Yeah, so drugs like Xanax, Valium, Ativan, these are prescription medications. They're not just prescription, but they're controlled substances. They are often prescribed for things like anxiety, but also used to help with sleep. The data on benzos and dementia, honestly, it's a little bit mixed. Some studies show that there's an increased risk of developing dementia and others don't. But what's not in dispute is that they do change your sleep architecture. They suppress REM sleep. They cause a rebound insomnia when you stop them. They're associated with falls and fractures, especially in older adults. And more than anything, they're just habit forming, right? They're addictive. So the American Geriatric Society specifically recommends against benzodiazepine use in older adults because of all of these risks. And yet they're still very commonly prescribed. Then there's melatonin. You enjoy taking a whiff of melatonin.
I think my melatonin bottle is probably older than our marriage because you say I like rub it in my teeth. It's like a 3 milligram pediatric dose, and I still like take like a nibble off of that. And you say it's placebo.
It's 100% placebo because it's like she licks the pill and then puts the rest of it back in the bottle.
Well, if placebo works, then I'm not really interfering with my natural sleep architecture.
That's right. Well, okay, so let's talk about melatonin. This one's super interesting because it's it's quote unquote natural. Your body makes melatonin, so supplementing it would seem harmless. And for short-term use, for things like jet lag, or you just happen to get a couple bad nights sleep and now you want to reset, I think it's actually totally fine. But for chronic long-term use, here's the real problem. We have data that raises concerns about this. There was a study that was presented to the American Heart Association in their 2025 scientific assembly, and it looked at over 130,000 people, all with adults with insomnia. Those who use melatonin for a year or more had about a 90% higher risk of developing heart failure compared to non-users. They were also nearly twice as likely to die from any cause over the next 5-year study period. So this is preliminary research. It's an association. It's not proof of causation. But people who use melatonin chronically may have worse insomnia or other health issues driving both the supplement use and the outcomes. But it's a signal that we shouldn't assume chronic melatonin use is risk free just because it's natural.
And here's another issue with melatonin. It's considered a dietary supplement, not a prescription in the US, which means it's not regulated the same way FDA approved medications are. Studies have found that what's on the label often doesn't match with what's in the bottle, which we see across the board with in the supplement industry. We've seen that from patients, and when it gets audited on what the dose is, it's either none of the active ingredient and you don't know what you're getting. It's pretty much the Wild West out there in the supplement industry.
There was a study, I want to say not even a year, maybe 2 years ago, that just took, I don't remember the exact number, but it was about 10 or 15 commonly sold melatonin supplements that were all supposed to be labeled as something like 3 milligrams. And dose variation ranged anywhere from 1 milligram up to 10 or 12 milligrams. And these are monster doses. Physiologically, your body really makes something around 0.4, 0.5 milligrams of melatonin a day. And so when you're supplementing, even with a 3 milligram dose, that's a huge dose, let alone somebody who thinks they're taking 3 milligrams, but is actually getting 10 or 12 milligrams from their supplement.
And I think another important thing to note, we had mentioned this concept when we talked about testosterone supplementation in men. If you are taking exogenous testosterone or exogenous melatonin, if you're taking a melatonin supplement, you're suppressing your body's own production of melatonin, right? Melatonin is created in the pineal gland. And if you're supplementing every single night for years and years, your body's going to get that signal to stop producing it altogether. And then you're going to need to be on a melatonin supplement for life. So these are the pathways, the natural physiologic pathways that, while taking a supplement occasionally for sleep, if you're stressed out or, like you said, jet lag, you need to rely on some of these once in a while. But taking it every night, you're really messing with your body's natural physiologic processes.
And this is why people think they work, right? Because they try to stop it, and then they can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, I need this because it's working. Well, it's really that you've been taking supra physiologic doses, right? You're taking 3 milligrams, 5 milligrams when your body really only needs less than 1. And now your body isn't making its own melatonin because you've suppressed it. And you need to keep taking these monster doses in order to get the effect, which is to try and fall asleep.
So me rubbing like a fifth of a milligram in between my gums of melatonin powder is like it's not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things.
You don't do it regularly, but
yeah.
It is comical watching you do it. There's so many things that we need to film just for the audience, like just so they can see.
Like weird habits.
Weird habits.
You have no weird habits. Give me a break.
No. So The point is not like you should never take a sleep aid. You absolutely should. Like if you need a little reset, you're jet lagged, you just had poor quality sleep for normal life stressors. Yes, taking a sleep aid for a day or two is not a problem. The point is really that reaching for the pill or prescription or over the counter supplement as a long-term solution to sleep is usually the wrong approach. These are just band-aids in the best case, and really they're potentially harmful in the worst.
All
They
right.
don't really address the underlying sleep issue.
All right, let's move on to a question that we get asked all the time, which is alcohol. How does alcohol affect sleep?
It's not good. Though I have had a lot of people say that they feel like they got the best night of sleep after they got drunk. I want to be nuanced about this because the the alcohol is poison, never touch it messaging. I think it's probably not realistic for everyone, and it ignores the fact that moderate alcohol consumption is really deeply embedded in our culture. So we need to really be honest about what alcohol does to sleep. The research is pretty clear. Alcohol is a sedative. So yes, it can help you fall asleep faster. But the quality of sleep is significantly compromised. There's a comprehensive meta-analysis of 27 different studies, and it basically says that alcohol ends up delaying your REM sleep. That's the rapid eye movement sleep. And it reduces the total duration of that sleep. So even at low doses, the standard 2 drinks, you see a disruption to that REM sleep. And the more you drink, the worse it gets. So every additional gram of alcohol per kilogram of body weight reduces REM sleep duration by about 40 minutes. What does that mean practically? You fall asleep fast, you get some initial deep sleep, and then the second half of your night really falls apart. So you end up getting more awakenings, you get more light sleep, less REM, you wake up feeling unrested. And REM sleep matters. It's critical for our memory consolidation, emotional processing, learning. When you suppress REM night after night, you're not getting the full restorative benefit of your sleep. Alcohol also worsens snoring and sleep apnea by relaxing those muscles that are in our hypopharynx. So if you're someone who already has a tendency towards sleep apnea or obstructed breathing at night, alcohol definitely makes it worse. I want to be honest about our own approach here. Nisha and I do still drink alcohol. We do enjoy that glass of wine with dinner or a cocktail on occasion. We're not absolutists about this.
Yeah, but we are way more mindful about alcohol than we used to be. I think we're more mindful when it comes to timing. I mean, I'm an early bird anyway, but having a drink with dinner at 7 p.m. is very different than having a drink at 10 p.m. right before bedtime. So if we choose to drink that night, we're definitely stopping way earlier than we would have previously. And those extra few hours to digest that alcohol, it really gives your body time to metabolize that alcohol before you fall asleep. We do think about quantity and frequency. And there are definitely folks in the longevity space who choose to not drink at all and abstain 100%, which good for them. And if you can make that work with your life, I mean, there's no doubt our workouts are better when we don't drink, right? We have better sleep. Our performance at work is better, obviously, when we're not drinking. But there are times where for us in our lives, we're on vacation, we're socializing with friends. It is embedded in our social fabric once in a while to have a drink or a glass of wine or a cocktail. But if you can make that work where you cut it out completely, the data would 100% support that, at least from a sleep perspective. But we've chosen that
Pretty much every perspective.
Every perspective. Oh, brain
Cancer
health.
risk,
Yeah.
brain health. There's no beneficial amount of alcohol.
let's say this, there's no medical benefit to alcohol other than that potential social, like if you and your friends are enjoying a glass of wine and getting together, that social benefit is there. But you can obviously have a social benefit without the alcohol as well.
There can be a potential psychological benefit, but I don't think that medically is this good for you?
No, that glass of wine with dinner, which is good for your heart, that's all bogus.
Yeah. So the key thing here is day drink. That's what I'm hearing. No.
It depends. On vacation, sure.
Yeah. So it's really kind of being intentional rather than just purely habitual. If you're using alcohol as a sleep aid, having a nightcap to help you relax, you're actually undermining your sleep quality. If you're having a drink because you genuinely enjoy it and you're spacing it out appropriately before bed, that's a totally different math.
All right, let's talk about what actually works when it comes to sleep hygiene and what matters.
We've talked about what not to do. I think you're right. We should talk about what does work. And I want to keep this practical and relatable because I've seen people turn sleep optimization into this elaborate ritual that kind of itself becomes a source of stress. So you don't need to wear like blue light blocking glasses to make you look like a budget Bono and line your bedroom with blackout curtains and weighted blankets and essential oils and a sound machine playing whale songs. But you do need the basics and get those right. So for some people, obsessive monitoring or orthosomnia, it actually makes sleep worse because it creates this cycle of anxiety around sleep. You're lying there at 2 a.m. thinking my sleep score is going to be terrible, which ironically guarantees that your sleep score is going to be terrible. Here's what actually ends up mattering, really based on clinical evidence. First, and most important, is consistency. So go to bed roughly at the same time every night, wake up roughly at the same time every morning, even including on weekends. Your circadian rhythm does not know the difference between Tuesday and Saturday. It doesn't care that brunch isn't until noon. Sleeping in until 10 a.m. after a week of 6 a.m. alarms doesn't necessarily fix that jet lag that you accrued during the week. You're constantly resetting your internal clock, and it doesn't end up working. Like, our circadian rhythm is really tied to light exposure, and when light diminishes, our melatonin starts to spike up. And that's really what we should be tying our clock to.
The second is light exposure. This is huge and underappreciated. So ideally in the morning, you want to get bright sunlight, right? We're in Chicago in the winter. It's not always possible, but in the summers, you definitely want to do that within the first hour of waking. This sets your circadian rhythm for the day. Then conversely, dim the lights in the evening. Your brain uses light cues to know when to produce melatonin. And this is where the screen issue comes in. I'm not going to tell you to never look at your phone after sunset, right? That's not realistic. But scrolling social media in bed in a dark room with a bright screen 6 inches from your face, that's sending a powerful message to your brain to stay awake, right? You are literally telling your brain that I need to stay awake right when you're trying to wind down.
Agreed. Third is temperature. Your body physiologically actually drops its core temperature to initiate sleep. So a cool bedroom statistically has been proven in research to actually facilitate this process. So most of the research actually says having a room temperature of 65 to 68 degrees is actually the best at facilitating sleep. If in your house this is a negotiation like it is in ours, Nisha likes a comfortable 75 at all times.
It's like sauna. Well, it depends. Now I'm in perimenopause. It's like sometimes I want a sauna. Sometimes I need a meat locker. It just depends.
It does. Sometimes she wants the fan on in the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes she doesn't.
I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night, like the fan's too loud or it's too hot or cold. Yeah, It happens. That's part.
Throws the weighted blanket off of her and onto me.
Yeah, it's a 15-pound weighted blanket. And it'll be like 2 a.m. and I'm like, it's like I have dreams that I'm hot. I know I'm hot. I'm sweating. And then I'll wake up and like throw this 15-pound weight onto you because it's your fault.
Because you're jacked and you have so much muscle, and it's just like,
it literally takes me like, I lift it with a finger, 15 pounds.
That's right. I think the next thing that we should also talk about is caffeine, right? That's the fourth one. So I love a good cup of coffee in the morning. I need 2 of those before I can even get started. The half-life of caffeine is about 5 to 6 hours. So having caffeine at 3 p.m., probably still in your system. Half of it's still in your system at 9 p.m. A quarter of it's still there at 3 a.m. If you're having sleep issues, try cutting off the caffeine by noon and see if this makes a difference for you.
You can have a Coke Zero right before bed and go to sleep.
Caffeine does not have much of an effect for me.
I think you being an ER doctor and having done these shift work your entire life, right? Swing shifts, night shifts, your sleep architecture is completely destroyed.
I think so, but I don't know there's got to be some sort of genetics to this because my parents will drink tea before bedtime. And that's caffeinated tea, right? Like in India, there was no decaf that I remember. So I don't know, but caffeine never really. It's one of those other things we talked about temperature, right? That our body drops our core temperature. People actually think that in the morning when they're drinking their coffee, that the caffeine is what's waking them up. It's actually not the caffeine that's waking them up. It's the temperature of the coffee. Your body has to increase core temperature. And when when you're drinking that warm coffee first thing in the morning, you're helping to increase temperature. That's what's giving you that first feeling of wakefulness. The caffeine kicks in 30, 45 minutes later, and then you've got that also working in your benefit.
All right. So we talked about alcohol, temperature. We talked about caffeine. Number 5, use your bed for sleep and intimacy only. Not for work, not for scrolling, not for watching TV. You want your brain to associate your bed with sleep, not with wakefulness and stimulation. Well, other kinds of stimulation. Okay, let's just stop.
You're making it uncomfortable. All right, moving on. 6. You ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
It's important to have a wind down routine. It doesn't have to be elaborate. Reading a book, light stretching, a warm shower, some quiet time. Give yourself that transition period rather than going straight from some high stimulation to expecting to fall asleep instantly. Your brain is not a light switch. It's more like a dimmer that you have to ease down. Like I know this because when I work an evening shift and I get home from the ER at 2 a.m., like I can't just get home at 2:30 and lights out. I'm ready to go to bed. Like I need like another 30, 40 minutes to read or eat a snack or something before I can go to bed. So most of us require some sort of wind down routine.
And 99% of patients that say, I'm having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, when we correct one of those 6 things, a lot of the sleep starts to fall into place. But if you're still struggling with sleep, that's when you talk to your doctor, right? For women in perimenopause and menopause, HRT is an option, and progesterone can certainly help with falling asleep. There are going to be underlying issues too, right? Obstructive sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, and other medical conditions that might need to be addressed. But for most people, the basics go a very long way.
Before, I think, really investigating like a prescription medication, they all kind of have some problems. The thing that we know works as good as any prescription medication works is CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And statistically, that has been proven to work as well, if not better, because it doesn't lose effectiveness over time like most of the sleep medications do. So I want to end with this thought. We talked at the beginning about how sleep is really the first thing that we're willing to sacrifice, deadlines, social obligations, entertainment. Sleep loses to all of those things. But when you understand what's actually happening in your brain when you don't sleep, that these toxins are accumulating, that cleaning crew of our body is not able to do its work. I think you start to recognize that, yes, my dementia risk is going up year after year. It really reframes the calculus entirely. That email that can't wait till morning, the show that'll still be there on Netflix, your brain's ability to clear that beta amyloid, that only happens when you are asleep. Tonight, sleep is not a luxury. It's not optional. It's just something that you have to prioritize. And, spoiler alert, like life never really seems to calm down. Like we have to just prioritize that this is the thing that we're going to do. It's really the foundation that everything else is built on, right? There's no animal species on the planet that does not sleep. It's conserved across the entire animal kingdom, which means that it must be really important for all mammals to sleep. So if you're serious about playing the long game, about being functional and independent and cognitively intact in your 70s, 80s, and beyond, sleep is truly non-negotiable. Tonight, when you're tempted to stay up late and just get one more thing done, remember your glymphatic system. Remember that your brain's little cleaning crew standing there with those tiny mops is just waiting for you to go to sleep so that they can get to work. Don't make them wait. Go to bed.
Yep. You guys heard the man. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode on sleep, and we hope we didn't put you to sleep in the process.
All right. Till next time.
That was a good one.
That was great.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you for playing the long game with MD Longevity Lab. You can visit us at www.mdlongevitylab.com to learn more about how we can support you on your journey. Stay connected with us on social media at MD Longevity Lab for tips, updates, and behind-the-scenes insights. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you subscribed, left us a rating, or shared it with someone you know who's also playing the long game. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.